A 12-year-old girl wakes up feeling sick on a September morning in 1982. Her parents give her extra-strength Tylenol for her cold symptoms, and within hours she's dead. That same day, 3 more people in the Chicago area take Tylenol for minor aches and pains, and they're dead too. By the end of the week, 7 people are gone, all from the same cause: cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules purchased from different stores across the suburbs. This wasn't a targeted attack on specific individuals. This was random, indiscriminate murder that could have killed anyone who happened to buy the wrong bottle at the wrong time. The Tylenol murders of 1982 changed everything: how we buy medicine, how products are packaged, how companies respond to tampering threats, and how we think about our safety in everyday life. But here's what hasn't changed in over 40 years: we still don't know who did it. Despite one of the most intensive investigations in FBI history, despite a prime suspect who's been in prison for decades, despite modern forensic technology and renewed investigative efforts, the person who poisoned those Tylenol bottles has never been caught. And that terrifies us because it means it could happen again. Welcome back to Crime Scout, True Stories. The Tylenol murders represent one of the most consequential unsolved cases in American history, not because of the body count, though 7 deaths is certainly tragic, but because of how it exposed our vulnerability and fundamentally changed consumer safety forever. Today we're examining what happened during those terrifying days in September 1982, the investigation that followed, and why this case remains unsolved after more than 4 decades. September 29, 1982, started as a normal day in the Chicago suburbs. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up in Elk Grove Village with a runny nose and sore throat, typical cold symptoms. Her parents gave her 1 extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Within hours, Mary collapsed. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Doctors were baffled. A healthy child doesn't just die from cold symptoms. That same morning, in Arlington Heights, 27-year-old Adam Janis came home from work with chest pain and took Tylenol. He collapsed within minutes and was rushed to the hospital, where he died. Later that day, Adam's family gathered at his home to mourn. His brother Stanley and Stanley's wife Teresa both took Tylenol from the same bottle to deal with the stress and grief. Both collapsed and died. 3 members of the same family, dead in one day. By the evening of September 29, 3 more victims had been claimed. Mary McFarland, 31, a new mother, took Tylenol and died. Paula Prince, 35, a flight attendant, bought Tylenol on her way home and was found dead in her apartment 2 days later. The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear: all the victims had taken extra-strength Tylenol capsules shortly before their deaths. Medical examiners in different jurisdictions started comparing notes and realized they were seeing the same thing: massive levels of cyanide poisoning. The Tylenol capsules these victims had taken contained potassium cyanide at levels thousands of times higher than what's needed to kill a human. Someone had deliberately poisoned these medications, but how and why remain terrifying mysteries. Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of McNeil Consumer Products which manufactured Tylenol, immediately issued a nationwide recall of all Tylenol products, 31 million bottles worth over $100 million. They stopped all production and advertising. This swift, decisive action, while financially devastating, saved countless lives and became a model for corporate crisis response. But the damage was done. 7 people were dead, and the public's trust in over-the-counter medication was shattered. The investigation involved multiple agencies, local police departments, the Illinois State Police, the FBI, and the FDA. Investigators quickly determined that the poisoning hadn't occurred during manufacturing. The tampered bottles came from different production facilities and different batch numbers. This meant someone had taken bottles off store shelves, opened them, laced the capsules with cyanide, and returned them to the shelves. It was a chilling revelation. The killer had walked into regular drugstores and supermarkets, tampered with products, and put them back for unsuspecting customers to purchase. Investigators traced the contaminated bottles to several stores across the Chicago area, Jewel and Osco drugstores primarily. They tested thousands of Tylenol bottles and found evidence of tampering in a handful. The killer had been selective but random, poisoning just enough bottles to cause death and panic, but not so many as to be immediately detected. This suggested someone with intelligence and planning, someone who understood both chemistry and psychology. The manhunt was massive. Police followed thousands of leads, investigated hundreds of suspects, and pursued every possible angle. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit created a profile, likely a white male, probably with access to cyanide through work or hobby, someone who wanted attention and power, possibly with a grudge against Johnson & Johnson or society in general. But profiles don't catch killers without evidence. Then came the copycats and extortionists. James William Lewis sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to stop the killings. He was arrested, but investigators determined he wasn't the original poisoner, he was just an opportunist trying to exploit the tragedy. Lewis was convicted of extortion and served 13 years in prison. He became the prime suspect in the actual murders, but there was never enough evidence to charge him. Lewis maintained his innocence in the poisonings until his death in 2023, though he admitted to the extortion letter. Another suspect who garnered attention over the years was a man named Roger Arnold, who worked at a jewel store. He was investigated extensively, including being charged with unrelated crimes, but was never connected definitively to the poisonings. Arnold later sued for false arrest and received compensation. The investigation also looked at disgruntled employees, competitors, and random criminals, but nobody was ever charged with the murders. The impact of the Tylenol murders extended far beyond the 7 victims and their families. The case fundamentally changed product packaging and safety regulations. Before 1982, over-the-counter medications were remarkably easy to tamper with. Bottles had simple caps, and capsules could be easily accessed, contaminated, and replaced. After the murders, the pharmaceutical industry and federal regulators completely redesigned safety packaging. Tamper-evident seals became mandatory. The plastic wrap around bottle caps, the foil seals under lids, the individually sealed pills, all these safety features we take for granted today were direct responses to the Tylenol murders. Congress passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act in 1983, making it a federal crime to tamper with consumer products. These changes have prevented countless deaths and made product tampering significantly more difficult. Johnson & Johnson's response to the crisis is still taught in business schools as a model of corporate responsibility. They prioritized public safety over profits, voluntarily destroying millions of dollars worth of product. They developed the first tamper-resistant packaging for Tylenol and pioneered the use of caplets instead of capsules, which are harder to tamper with. They were transparent with the public and cooperated fully with investigators. Within a year, despite the tragedy, Tylenol had regained most of its market share because consumers trusted how the company had handled the crisis. But none of this brought back the 7 victims or caught their killer. Mary Kellerman, 12 years old, never got to grow up. Adam Janus, 27, never got to build his future. Stanley Janus, 25, and his wife Teresa, 19, newlyweds, never got to build their life together. Mary Reiner, 27, left behind a young child. Mary McFarland, 31, her infant daughter lost a mother. Paula Prince, 35, was found alone in her apartment, a senseless, random death. These weren't targeted victims. They were ordinary people going about ordinary lives, doing something we all do, taking medicine for minor ailments. In recent years, the case has seen renewed attention. In 2009, the FBI raided James Lewis's home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, seizing computers and documents. They were using new forensic techniques to re-examine evidence. But Lewis was never charged, and he died in 2023 without ever being prosecuted for the murders. The case remains open, and Chicago area law enforcement periodically receives tips that are investigated, but no breakthrough has come. Modern technology offers some hope. DNA analysis, which wasn't available in 1982, might yield results from preserved evidence. Digital forensics could reveal connections that weren't apparent 40 years ago. But the reality is that as time passes, witnesses die, memories fade, and evidence degrades. The person who committed these murders may have died years ago, taking the truth with them. What makes the Tylenol murders so disturbing isn't just that they're unsolved. It's the randomness. The killer didn't know the victims. They had no personal connection, no motive specific to these 7 people. They were willing to kill indiscriminately, not caring who died as long as someone did. This kind of random violence is terrifying because it's impossible to protect against completely. You can lock your doors, avoid dangerous areas, be cautious with strangers, but you can't avoid ever buying consumer products. The case also demonstrates how one person with evil intent and basic knowledge can cause massive harm. The killer didn't need sophisticated weapons or access to secure facilities. They needed only cyanide, which was relatively available for industrial and agricultural uses in 1982, and the willingness to use it. This vulnerability in our consumer supply chain was always there, but nobody had exploited it so dramatically before. This has been Crime Scout, True Stories. The Tylenol murders changed how we live, how products are packaged, and how we think about safety in everyday transactions. 7 people died, and their killer was never caught. The case remains open, waiting for that one piece of evidence or that one confession that might finally bring justice. Subscribe for more cases where the impact was undeniable, but the answers remain elusive.